Hello everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Real History. I am your host, History Professor Jared Frederick, and I just got back from seeing Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer on the big screen. One of my first impressions was one of surprise because I walked into the theater. It was a super jumbo big screen experience. I turned the corner and there's hundreds of people sitting in the audience. Not something that I typically encounter when I go see a historical film on the big screen. And I thought only Christopher Nolan could bring in so many people in a film that is mostly about conversation. Momentous conversations that transpired during the Second World War. And while we will be taking an in-depth look at this movie at a later point with one of our sister channels, The Atomic Age, in the coming months, in the meantime, I thought I would share some initial thoughts and also break down some of the themes that I thought were very much apparent in Oppenheimer. So let's go ahead and take a look. Number one. Perspective. One of the most compelling traits of Oppenheimer is its even-handedness on the issue of perspective, both historically and cinematically. We, the audience, receive an intimate view of the main protagonist while also slowly absorbing upon the machinations of his political adversary, Lewis Strauss, played by Robert Downey Jr. Both men who see themselves as heroes fighting for what is right. That's ultimately how they're depicted and how they saw each other. Each of them articulates their worldviews to the camera, and they do so really well. This creates not only nuance, but rich and necessary historical context. And I'll tell you what, if Cillian Murphy and Robert Downey Jr. are not nominated for Academy Awards, then there's something that is dramatically wrong with the system. Just top-notch acting all around. From an artistic angle, I also thoroughly appreciated the numerous segments of the film shot in black and white. These many flash forwards to the political drama of the 1950s were not only an homage to that era of Hollywood, but is also a useful means of drawing narrative lines between past and present. And it was just really, really brilliantly done. Number two, loyalty. Oppenheimer excels at showing the precarious nature of allegiance before, during, and after the years of the Second World War. Questions of whether greater loyalty should be exhibited toward family, friends, colleagues, country, or convictions reverberate throughout the entire film. The issue of choosing sides within the framework of American government constantly plagues the characters, and I find to be a fairly accurate portrayal of the delicate mind games that these people in power ultimately had to play and tiptoe through. The movie likewise does a very admirable job of demonstrating the destructive ugliness of the McCarthy-era witch hunts. All of these factors, in turn, segue to our next theme. Number three. Victimhood. Beyond the Japanese victims of the two atomic blasts, many of the real-life characters become victims of political circumstance, hubris, ego, competition, internal power struggles, and at times, even their own demons. The most dominant representation of this dynamic in the film is the philosophical and bureaucratic duel between Oppenheimer and Strauss. For reasons that you will discover once you see the film for yourself, both men become victims due in part to their ultimately antagonistic attitude that they have against each other, and the consequences are immense. Their tale is perhaps allegorical for the tale of nuclear weapons themselves. Both men ultimately lose. And a very good line from another cautionary movie that I was thinking about, a 1980s film called War Games, comes to mind. Strange game. The only way to win is not to play. That brings us to number 4, relevance. First, I'll say that the recreation of the Trinity blast is not only quite accurate, but it is cinematically stunning, and it really makes your heart race as the countdown clock is ticking away. However, an hour still remains in the film after that mushroom cloud appears over the New Mexico desert. And it's a real testament to Christopher Nolan's skills as a filmmaker that the pace of the movie does not slow down at all, and the stakes remain incredibly high as the characters ponder what comes next. I won't ruin the ending for you, but the finale of the film is one that will make you think. It will raise concerns and considerations about dangers in our modern world. It is incredibly powerful, and that brings us to our 5th and final point. Morality. This is not your typical American World War II film that heaves blind adulation upon the greatest generation. It is a little bit more complex than that, and I think it is a complexity that audiences will and should appreciate. It is not a film of blind praise, but nor does it point any fingers. The movie lays all the cards on the table, and the audience is left to make its own decision regarding the pros and cons of dropping atomic weapons on 2 major Japanese cities. It's very effective storytelling. Throughout the film, scientists express qualms about the gadget that they are creating. They worry about the repercussions of it, and conversely, generals and politicians who are featured in the film explain what will happen if the bombs are not dropped. And so it is very, very even-handed in this regard. Now, the movie does not include a recreation of the 2 bombs actually being dropped, nor does it include any archival footage of the Japanese victims or of the bomb's devastation that was unleashed upon those metropolitan areas. However, it is constantly clear throughout the entire movie, especially in the final third of it, the immense weight, this immense burden that was on the shoulders of those involved in developing the weapon. As a result, the film is introspective rather than preachy. It is also immersive rather than removed. And I think it was fully Christopher Nolan's intention to make this an experience, not just a story. And in this regard, he succeeds quite admirably. Now, is Oppenheimer a perfect film historically? No, it's not. There are certain historical flaws, there are creative liberties that are taken, but even the greatest historical films often fall within this category. I think the important thing to recognize is that Christopher Nolan really did his homework. He did research. It's apparent in the script that he wrote, and he approached the subject matter with the intelligence, even-handedness, and respect that it fully deserves. And for that reason, I think you should go see Oppenheimer on the big screen. Thanks for tuning into some of my initial thoughts on Oppenheimer. As I said, in the coming months, we are going to be doing a fuller, in-depth analysis of this film. We're going to break some of the scenes down, scene by scene. I'm going to be offering some additional historical context, and we'll also be having Charlie Murphy, host of The Atomic Age, on for that episode as well, to offer some of the technical perspectives that I, as an arts and humanities person, will definitely not be able to offer you with such depth and clarity. In the meantime, we're going to have a lot more great content. If you've just recently discovered this channel, please hit that subscribe button below. Take a look at all of our other great content. We hope it won't disappoint. That wraps it up for this episode of Real History. Thanks for tuning in. Until we see you next time, as always, stay curious.